Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we are unpacking an incredibly complex, multi-layered situation that is unfolding right now at the very top of American law enforcement. If you've even glanced at the news lately, you've definitely seen the headlines surrounding FBI Director Kash Patel. I mean, there is just a massive storm of allegations, lawsuits, and really explosive claims out there. But, as focused learners, we want to look past all that surface noise. So in this explainer, we're going to impartially break down those headline-grabbing controversies, and then we're going to dig into the documented structural shifts happening underneath that actually impact national security and, by extension, your personal safety. Let's get started.
Okay, let's dive into this by looking right at the center of the storm. As you can see, Kash Patel's immediate defense is aggressive, and he is absolutely not backing down. This was his direct response following a total bombshell of a report published by The Atlantic on April 17, 2026. Patel vehemently denies their claims, completely dismissing them, and going squarely on the offensive to defend his time as director.
Now, to really grasp why this report made such massive waves, just look at this number, 24. That is the minimum number of anonymous sources, current and former officials inside the FBI and the Department of Justice that The Atlantic actually cited in their investigation. And the reporters specifically noted that every single one of them insisted on anonymity because they were terrified of professional retaliation. Which brings us to a really fundamental question. How did the nation's top law enforcement official end up at the center of this kind of storm? To answer that, we're going to use what we can call the iceberg model. We need to separate the visible, dramatic stuff happening above the water from the deeper, structural shifts happening below the surface. So, part one, the surface, allegations and lawsuits. Looking at these surface-level allegations, the Atlantic report lays out some highly specific, pretty wild claims. Sources allege Patel exhibited erratic behavior, literally described as freakouts, and showed obvious intoxication at private clubs in Washington, D.C. and Las Vegas. Sources also claimed his unexplained absences have actually delayed time-sensitive investigations. Furthermore, the report revealed that even the president has privately expressed frustration that Patel seems unprepared for TV appearances and just isn't moving fast enough on specific investigations. So while the White House is publicly defending him, the report claims a lot of staffers are simply waiting around for an announcement of his firing. Well, Patel's response was swift and it was massive. He filed a defamation lawsuit against The Atlantic and the reporter, Sarah Fitzpatrick. Notice that figure right there, $250 million. That is not a random number. It's the exact same dollar amount President Trump used when he sued CNN. Patel actually went on Fox News and confidently called this lawsuit a legal layup.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the legal reality of that lawsuit. It all hinges on the actual malice standard. As FBI director, Kash Patel is obviously a highly visible public figure. That means he has to meet this very specific bar established in the 1964 Supreme Court case, New York Times versus Sullivan. It's not enough for Patel to just prove the article was wrong. He has to legally prove that the publisher knew it was false or acted with reckless disregard for the truth. And legal experts will tell you, clearing that hurdle against a publication standing by 24 sources, that is incredibly difficult. It's far from a layup.
And that brings us to the real double-edged sword of filing this lawsuit, the discovery phase. If a judge doesn't toss this case out early on, both sides get to demand evidence under oath. That means The Atlantic would be able to subpoena records, depose witnesses, and ask questions in sworn depositions. Basically, if Patel pushes this forward, the very behavior he's trying to defend against could be systematically examined in a federal courtroom entirely on the public record. Moving on to part two, below the surface, documented decisions. All right, we are going to step away from the disputed allegations about private clubs for a minute to look at the confirmed actions Patel has taken since his confirmation in February 2025. It's absolutely crucial to separate unverified rumors from documented facts. Whether you believe the Atlantic report or view it as a total hit piece, there is a distinct, confirmed trail of decisions Patel has made as director. He was brought in to dismantle what conservative allies viewed as a weaponized, corrupt DOJ. And looking at the documented actions on the right, we see exactly how he has executed that mandate.
This brings us to what critics are calling a loyalty operation. Since taking office, Patel's cleaning house protocol has involved firing agents and pressuring employees to resign. But most notably, sources report that he has subjected staff to polygraph tests, and not just to find intelligence leakers. They are reportedly asking specialized law enforcement agents whether they have ever expressed critical personal opinions about Patel himself or the president.
Now for part 3, the CI-12 unit, counterintelligence at risk.
Okay, this brings us to what is probably the most consequential national security element of this explainer, the hollowing out of the FBI's elite counterintelligence squad, known as the CI-12 unit. The timing here is critical, so let's walk through it. The CI-12 unit specializes in tracking foreign adversaries on American soil, specifically threats from Iran. In late February 2026, Patel fired approximately a dozen agents from this exact unit. Why? Well, according to reports, it was because their phone records had been subpoenaed years prior during the investigation into classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. They were literally fired for participating in a past legal investigation. But look at the end of that timeline. This gutting of the Iran counterintelligence unit happened just days before the United States launched Operation Epic Fury, a major bombing strike that killed Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali.
As you might guess, this move triggered immediate alarm. And the pushback didn't just come from political opponents, it came from inside the House. The FBI Agents Association, the union representing the agents themselves, issued a very stark warning. They publicly stated that stripping away this critical expertise destabilized the workforce and put the nation at greater risk. Lawmakers noticed too. Democratic Representative Grace Meng formally demanded Patel explain why he fired Iran counterintelligence specialists mere days before America engaged in military strikes against Iran. And this brilliantly illustrates how these policies have a much wider impact. According to CNN reporting, many offices within the DOJ's National Security Division have lost at least half of their employees since this administration began. Half. That means half of the offices dedicated to counterterrorism and foreign intelligence tracking are just gone. That is a massive, documented drain of institutional knowledge. On to part 4, the political pivot, 2020 arrest promises. Now, let's look at how Patel navigated the public fallout of these controversies. During his Fox News interview with Maria Bartiromo, the same one where he announced his defamation lawsuit, he made a highly unusual pivot. While defending himself against the allegations of erratic behavior, Patel suddenly told the audience, quote, "We've got all the information we need, and we are going to be making arrests, and it's coming, and I promise you it's coming soon." He was promising arrests related to the 2020 election. You know, an election that took place 6 years ago. Context is incredibly important here, so let's just ground ourselves in the facts for a second. Remember, over 60 courts reviewed that election and found no widespread fraud. Furthermore, the conservative leadership of the previous Trump administration, including former Attorney General Bill Barr and former FBI Director Chris Wray, thoroughly investigated and explicitly concluded there was no evidence of widespread fraud that would change the outcome. So the crucial point we have to ask is, why announce this now? As MSNBC national security reporter David Rode points out, the prevailing journalistic theory is that this wasn't about new, groundbreaking evidence. It was essentially a public message to an audience of one. Facing a devastating news cycle and internal whispers of being replaced, Patel went on a network the president watches and promised action on the president's central grievance. Why? To save his job. Finally, part 5, the broader institutional toll. As we zoom out for our final segment, we really have to look past one man's career and look at the broader institutional toll. What actually happens to the national security infrastructure of a country under these conditions? The FBI was originally designed to function as an independent law enforcement agency that answers to the Constitution, entirely free from partisan weaponization. But the documented firings suggest a shift toward what sources call a structure of fear. When agents are polygraphed over their personal opinions and specialized units are gutted in retaliation for past lawful investigations, the foundation of the institution fundamentally changes. It alters its DNA. And reports indicate this friction is causing a slow erosion of support for Patel, even within Trump's own orbit. So what does this all mean? We'll leave you with this final, vital question to think about. You can debate the anonymous sources in the Atlantic. You can debate the defamation lawsuit. But the documented reality is that elite counterintelligence teams tracking foreign threats were gutted for political reasons, just before a major military conflict. So when a domestic law enforcement institution reportedly prioritizes loyalty over competence, who is left to protect the nation? Think on that. And as always, stay curious.